Welcome to the Amazing Authorities Podcast, where game changers, visionaries, and category leaders share how they built their brands, platforms, and global influence. Your host is Mitch Carson, international speaker, media strategist, and creator of the Instant Authority System. If you're ready to learn from those who've done it and want to become the go-to expert in your space, you're in the right place.
Ladies and gentlemen, I have got an expert today who's living his dream. His name is John Ball. He's in the same category that I am most passionate about, and that's why he's an expert on this call to help you today. He's British, so I've been giving him English lessons before the recording has begun, and now living in Spain. I'm American, living in Thailand. So we're both out of our native countries, living our lives, and he's going to share great pearls of wisdom because he's got vast experience in the whole arena of presentations and speaking and delivering a powerful keynote in a persuasive manner. Let's get it together for John Ball. Welcome to the show, John.
It's quite the welcome, Mitch. I'm very happy to be here.
Yeah, and whereabouts in Spain are you?
I live in the beautiful city of Valencia on the Mediterranean coast.
Wow, you've even got the sound going on, Valencia. Yeah,
Valencia.
you're picking it up. Well, as a fellow speaker, what has this done for your clients? Teaching them how to present more persuasively. I want to jump in with a case study right at the onset of what have you done for what person?
Yeah,
Which
sure.
person?
But let me start with someone I've worked with very recently, a lady called Kerry, and she came to me saying what she was finding. She was already doing keynote events, and she was doing really quite long keynote addresses, but people weren't really asking her to come back, and people weren't booking her for the workshops and additional programs that she was offering. And she said, "Can you help?" So I said, "Look, I'd love to help. Let me take a look at your keynote." And we took a look at that, and that's where we started. And that's where straight away I saw there was some things that needed to be changed just in how she structured it and what she was doing when she delivered it that would actually allow her to be less of a teacher on the stage and more of a personality. And that's what we ended up working on. She actually, just about a week after we first started working on this, she went and delivered at a place where she had spoken the year before. And the booker came up to her and said, "Hey, look, we were happy to have you back, but we weren't sure about booking you again in the future. But what you did today was way above and beyond what you did last year. And we absolutely loved it. It was shorter, it was more impactful. And that was just after a short while of working together. We did a bit more beyond that as well, but it was very clear that there were differences that made a big difference for her."
Well, that's fantastic because that translates to what every speaker should be after, which is profits. And how do you make more profits? By getting a reorder, which is a rebooking. And what, may I ask, give me a couple points that where she was and where you took her and why she then affected that changed reaction from the booking agent.
Because she was delivering a keynote. She was generally taking about an hour and a half to 2 hours to do a keynote that could have been done in 45 minutes.
Okay, time.
And so that was a big part of it. But also having come from a background of training, like many of the clients I work with have previously been in workshops and training and moving more into keynotes. She was packing far too much information into her keynote presentations, and it was overloading people. So it was really more of a workshop that was being called a keynote talk, but the audience weren't keeping up with it all and they weren't remembering the information. And because she had presented everything, there was no real reason for them to book a workshop with her afterwards when they'd already been given everything pretty much in a condensed format, whether they remembered it all or not. And that's what wasn't happening. So she wasn't getting that many rebookings. She wasn't getting as many referrals as she wanted. And she certainly wasn't getting the additional workshop bookings that she really wanted. And that's what had to change and did start to change when we did some work together.
So the problem that you fixed was the time of speech. You suggested she go from 2 hours, which I agree is way too long for a keynote, I think
Yeah.
50 minutes is the optimal I've read or something like that. So the time of speech. So rule number one, and I wrote this in the notes, too much teaching.
Yeah.
And that's more of a workshop. So it didn't leave any curiosity and no open loops to learn more. Is that a fair deduction?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Not enough stories in there, not enough of her personality or her charisma in there. It was more like she was the vessel for teaching rather than a personality on the stage that the audience could connect with. So we did a lot of work on that, and that she was a little resistant to putting more personal and experiential stories into the talk until she tried it and realized that it was deepening the connection that she had with her audience as well. So there were a lot of changes to the structure and style of what she did that made her pop more as a professional speaker, that people would want to have back because they were having more fun with her and they were learning, but they were enjoying the experience and not feeling overloaded.
Now, let me ask this. These are some basics, but I find many supposed professionals. I mean, I just got back from a big event in Japan, as I mentioned, and I spoke there, and there were several other speakers beyond the man that was conducting this 2-day workshop with 300 people. It was a big event, very high profile guy in Japan. Several of the speakers came in, and they were supposed professionals, and showed bullet after bullet after bullet in the presentation. Right. What are some of your suggestions with the boring bullets, I'll call it?
I do feel that when it comes to presentations, the only reason to have slides, in my opinion, is if they enhance the presentation. And so if they don't, then they probably shouldn't be there. They shouldn't be your cue cards. They shouldn't be something to lean on. They shouldn't be something that the audience can just read along and pay attention to them whilst they're ignoring what you're saying on the stage. So the fewer words on these things, the better. And really, I tend to use more images than words. Keywords and images, I'm much happier with those things that really illustrate. If I'm going to do a slideshow presentation, it's going to be images that have a bit more relevance and impact and fit with what I'm saying and don't distract from what I'm talking about. So as much as if you were, if you were wearing a t-shirt with a slogan on it and people were trying to read that while you're talking, they're distracted from what you're trying to say. They're focused on the wrong thing. And that's what most people end up doing with their slideshow presentations and just leaning on it as a crutch. So I say maybe try and take it away if you can, because it's not always necessary unless you feel that it's a standard you have to live up to. But you should be able to deliver without it. If you can't deliver your presentation without the slideshow presentation, then you are definitely leaning too heavily on it.
Oh, I agree. Then it's a crutch for many people because they haven't rehearsed. That shows that they haven't rehearsed. They don't have the mental picture that it needs to go, that needs to be conveyed to the audience. And totally agree with everything you said. I've been doing this a very long time, 4 decades. And I used to be that PowerPoint guy that had the bullets in there until I was corrected. And then I read some research. Tell me if you read the same research, because I want this to help the listeners. In the English language, I think there are only 2 languages there are only 2 languages, Hebrew and I think Japanese, where they read from right to left. We read from left to right. And we cannot hear, see, and take the information in if we have to read, view something, and listen to you. It just creates confusion. Too many questions. It puts people into a tilt mode. So yes, an image only. I've gone to only images. I use no text except when I'm selling something. I have to show what they're getting for the price, for the value. But actually through the presentation, only high image quality graphics, high quality images.
Exactly the way to do it. It's certainly very relevant if you are doing sales. You do still need to have some bullet point slides probably and be able to take people through stuff.
For that aspect.
For that alone. But without that, less is more. Like try and have as few slides as you really need that can still maybe add a bit of pizzazz to your talk and enhance it. That is the key word here. I think it needs to enhance your talk if you're going to use it at all. And we probably all had this experience of going somewhere and talking, and the slide projector isn't working, or there's some sort of issue that you can't use your slides. And if you are dependent on those for your presentation, you're kind of screwed, right? So it's going to be important that you make sure it's not a crutch for you.
Yeah, and I think we learned through pain. Early in
Yeah.
my live presentation, I mean, I've been presenting for a long time, but one of my early presentations, I used something called overhead transparencies. This is before PowerPoint.
I remember those. Yeah, yeah.
Yes, and I had about 30 in my presentation, all carefully laid out, laying it on. Well, I tripped over a cord when I was coming to the projector and to the overhead light, the lamp, and they all flew in every direction. And I was already nervous because one of my mentors was in the back of the room to watch me, and I was at a Cairo conference, and it went everywhere. And I had to then rely, and it was all structured like this is this, this is, oh my gosh, I wasn't rehearsed. I spent so much time on the product I was pitching and not on the presentation that I needed to present. Let's just say I embarrassed myself.
Yeah.
And it's those types of situations. What should somebody do when technology fails? Because I'm going to ask you some questions that's outside of what you, because this will help people. And it's not all the good times roll. Technology will fail. What do you do when you are under pressure?
All you really can do is roll with it. I think one of the most important things is not to try and ignore it and pretend it's not happening. So if technology is failing whilst you are speaking, you need to acknowledge that to your audience. Otherwise, they're going to think that you haven't realized what's going on, or that they're in some, they're being gaslit or whatever else. So you must acknowledge it, but you can incorporate it into what you're doing if you're clever enough with this. And this is just about being relaxed and being of a somewhat improvisational mindset of try and bring it into what you're talking about. Maybe you can use it as a metaphor to illustrate something. Maybe you can make a joke about it that at least acknowledges it and has the audience laugh and say, all right, we know it's there. We're going to carry on anyway. So unless whatever issue is stopping the presentation from continuing completely, you should still be able to roll with it. And your audience are going to think you're amazing if you can take this in your stride.
So tell me about body language. This is another way of connecting and or persuading the audience to react. What are some of the keys that you can share?
Sure. I think one of the most important things when you're on stage is about looking grounded, looking confident when you're standing there, because we've probably all seen speakers who they kind of wobble around when they're on stage. They're hopping from one foot to the next, or their hands are shaking or rubbing together, or they're fiddling with something in their pockets, and it's all distracting and it makes you look that you're not confident. And so you want to be planted to the floor more or less in a relaxed posture where your movement can be more volitional, which just means you are more conscious of it. You're moving with intention when you move at all. So any movement you make should be intentional. Maybe there's going to be a bit of hand movement that might come outside of that. But again, I think if you are someone who likes to talk with the hands a lot, you may need to still dial some of that down so that doesn't become a distraction as well. This is all going to be stuff that you need to probably watch yourself being filmed on. You maybe need to have a coach watch you and give you that feedback. One of the things that I've certainly done and experienced in many trainer trainings is that you first of all start delivering with no movement whatsoever. And it is one of the hardest things to do because we move so much, and then move into more volitional, conscious movement. What I would definitely steer away from is there are these things, you may have heard of them, called satir categories, which are 5 different kind of archetypal positions, if you were. So you have things like the thinker, where you have your arm folded and your hand on your chin. You have the blamer, which is like pointing your finger at people. The placator, which is like flattening out your hands in a sort of cross. There are 5 of these, and Look, they are good. They are truly archetypal movements that do represent the emotions that they're talking about. But when you are trying to do those a little too intentionally, it starts to look a bit robotic. So this is all about trying to have natural movement and natural body language where you want to be somewhat open to your audience. You want to have your hands somewhat open. So I think hands sort of apart and palm showing is a good place to be a lot of the time. But for women particularly, to keep it mid-body rather than upper body, because otherwise it's bringing attention to where you don't want everybody to be bringing attention to. And somewhat for men as well. And mid-body is probably a good place to aim for, but as well, volitional with that. It should make sense that you're doing that. You should be open and connecting with your audience. So I think one of the best things, biggest things we can do with body language is make eye contact and smile with our audience and try and have an expansive view of our audience. So we're taking everybody in when we're on stage. I think these are pretty basic stuff. And we want to make sure that we go to all parts of our audience as well. We don't want anybody feeling that we're just talking to one person or that we're just talking to one part of the audience and not to everybody.
Got it. Now, persuasion is your topic. That's where you've got, yes, I was a guest on your podcast, which was an excellent experience. Tell me what drew you to persuasion. Was it Robert Cialdini? Was it somebody else? What ignited that fire of that topic for you, John?
Yeah, sure. It was someone you might have heard of, but a lot of people may not know, a guy called Mark Joyner.
Oh, I know Mark very well. He went through my speaking mastery program.
So I was going through some of Mark's programs, and he had this book, which I think was maybe only available online, called Mind Control Marketing.
Oh, yes.
And so I read that, and it was fascinating to me, this whole world of unseen influence. And that was initially what sparked this curiosity in me for this. This is incredible. I want to know more about this. I started learning things like NLP and hypnosis and stuff. Some of it was helpful, some of it not so much. But I definitely started getting more into public speaking and finding out what was persuasive there, and maybe some of the things that we're not always consciously aware of that came up there. I didn't even know about rhetoric, for example, before I started getting into public speaking, that there was this whole art form of being more influential in how we speak, that people don't necessarily register it while you're doing it, but we've probably all heard examples of it. If you start hearing and if you start think about things that are said in threes, for example, one of the most common rhetorical devices, it creates an impact for what we're saying. Three is somehow that magic number that seems to work, but there are so many more. It just became a huge fascination for me that we are so open to manipulation, if you like, or influence, because I don't think all influence is, or I don't think all manipulation is bad, but so much of it is under the surface. And I wanted to know, I wanted to really investigate that. So it lit a fire in me of, I want to know as much about this as I can. I want to understand how these tools work, how they work on me. Reading Robert Cialdini's book was a huge eye-opener for me. That really opened the door to me thinking, oh, this is absolutely one of my favorite topics. So much so that I pretty much made my podcast about helping people to be more influential and persuasive and tying that in with their presentation and public speaking skills.
Yeah, and I went through Robert Cialdini's course in Arizona some years ago. Now he has a different certification, and I found it fascinating, equally fascinating, and studied NLP, and there are many things that could be used from the stage. How can speakers apply your persuasive teaching into their presentations? What are some of the, you mentioned the threes, like ABC, 1, 2, 3, is that?
Yeah, look, sometimes it's things like using powerful metaphors. I think this is one of my favorites, really. Metaphors are a rhetorical device. And so we are likening something to something else. And we want to, ideally, in a talk, try and stay with one major metaphor that runs through everything. So that could be a travel metaphor, that we're going on a journey. I mean, maybe we're going to have some rough skies or some stormy seas along the way, or maybe it's going to be smooth sailing from this bit. We're going to land safely safely in our destination. These are all things we can use as metaphors in a presentation. Metaphorical language is so common, we barely think about it, but it helps people to make the connections in the same ways that stories do. And so I think it was one of the most powerful ones that is usually flies in under the radar. So kind of sticking with that flying metaphor there.
Yeah, there you go. There you go.
Right. And so people don't really think about it, but they do associate it and they get what that's talking about. If we could have a fighting metaphor, a war metaphor, and so a lot of the language will be relating to fighting or war if that feels appropriate. If we're having to rally the troops against the common enemy sort of thing, that may well be the sort of language that you want to use. So those are some of the things, but there are basic things like really how you show up on stage and having the confidence, turning up the dials for your personality, being authentically yourself when you are on the stage, but as well being a somewhat curated, authentic version of yourself, which sounds paradoxical, but it really isn't when we get into the training on that. You've probably encountered people who completely different people when they're off stage to on stage. And so I like people to be more dialed up versions of who they are on stage rather than a different personality altogether. I think that's far more preferable.
Talk to me about introduction reels. And are they powerful ways to persuade people, falling into your category, to like you and connect with you beforehand? And should we include testimonials in that intro reel?
For demo reels for speakers, is
Yes.
that what we're talking about?
Yeah. Before they take the stage, before, let's say, the MC says, John Ball hails from the UK. He's going to come and present today and share with you the top techniques effective communicators use in their presentation styles. But let's watch this short video introduction of John. And then it's something with music, glamour, maybe somebody says something nice on your behalf. I don't know, maybe there's a snippet of you speaking. Whatever is put into let's call it 1 minute intro, in 1 to 2 minutes seems to be the standard length of those intro reels before you jump on stage.
Yeah, I they can be great. I would say they're a little different I would put more of a pizzazz reel, really. That's more of a highlights thing for you that you may want to use. I don't teach people to use that. I think demo reels are sufficient and they are for helping your bookers to know whether you're a good speaker or not. For me personally, it's enough to give whoever is going to be introducing me the introduction that I would like them to read, and then I'll do the rest from there. Because you already have a great degree of credibility inferred on you by being the speaker who's up on the stage. And then the person who, it's always third-party introductions are more powerful. Like if you are the person going on and introducing yourself, it has much less impact than a third-party host introducing you on the stage. So give them the intro, make sure they've got it written down and that they're going to use it, because that's going to be more impactful for you to have someone else saying, oh, it's great, he's going to talk about this is what we've brought him in for. And then you come on the stage and you can just get on with your presentation and connect with the audience. And so for me, I don't necessarily think the sizzle reels are essential. If you like that and you want to really get your audience more energized and motivated before you speak, and that's going to help, great, sure. If it makes sense to do it, absolutely. But I don't do it and I don't teach it. Demo reels, which are still somewhat sizzle, should have some of the audience and booker experience in there for you, even if it's just a few slides with quotes from them. And certainly seeing you on different stages, maybe doing different aspects of what you talk about, is far more relevant for the people who are going to book you than the people who are in the audience, because they're already there to see you.
Okay, so that's interesting. Now, I'm going to challenge you with this. Have you ever been introduced poorly by the MC?
Yes.
How do you fix that? What preparation goes into getting the MC? Because I think it's terrible when they either read your bio and they sound robotic, or they omit really important elements of your bio.
Yeah.
So you take the stage and they say, hey, that's John Ball, ladies and gentlemen, put your hands together. And they've told nothing about you.
Sure. Yeah, it definitely has happened to me. I still would carry on and do the presentation. And because they're going to get to know about me anyway, and I don't want to be that guy who's then going to say, "Oh, what you weren't told is that I'm here to talk about this." Because I think as soon as you're on stage saying, "I'm here, this is me, I'm here to talk to you about this," you start losing your audience. You really, to me, I have the same philosophy with my podcast or pretty much with any content I put online. If you haven't got people hooked in within the first few moments of with a video or podcast, you maybe have 5 seconds before someone's like, I'm going to listen to something else. So it has to be quick. You might get a bit more leeway on stage because it's harder for people to just get up and walk out, but you still need to hook them in really quick. So I would still lean into, I might actually maybe throw in what we are here for, but I'm not going to be doing my own introduction still, even in that situation. I'm just going to maybe learn from that and have a word with the host before I speak at the next event to make sure that they are going to use this and they will read it, and that make sure that they understand how important it is that they do that.
Okay, great information. Assuming you get out there, what are some of your favorite go-to opening lines to engage and hook the audience, to persuade them to listen to you?
So I think I like asking questions to the audience. I think it's one of the great ways to start. And sometimes you are going to, depending on what you're talking about, you're going to provide them with that of asking some sort of sharing a statistic that highlights this question that you're asking them. So it might be something like 90% of business leaders have never had any kind of professional speaker training, and it's damaging. And here's going to be how it's damaging their results or damaging their leadership. That's going to be, all right, this is probably something, if I'm leader or I want to be in a leadership position, I should probably pay some attention to this, because maybe I haven't had much communication skills training, and this could be relevant for me. So I think questions are always a good way to bring people in, but I like stories as well. And I will start, much like a lot of movies do, action movies always start with action sequences. So you're in the action right as you get started. Someone's running along a beach or being chased or something. So you're already in the action.
Mission Impossible.
Right, exactly. James Bond films, they always start with an action sequence. So you start then with the action as well. Start into a story that's going to hook people in. And I generally would start with something that is actually relates to me, a more personalized story, because I think that's going to help them to get to know me a little bit more as well. Before, I don't want to be using those commonly shared stories of the starfish on the beach or the Chinese farmer or all those parables, the stonemasons. We've heard them all, and too many speakers use them all the time. So personalized stories will stand out and will actually allow you to connect more with an audience when they feel that they actually know a little bit about you.
Well, did you notice how we started with the story of right at the beginning of the podcast? Yeah. I felt that that's necessary. That showcases your skills, proves that you are an expert, and it gets the audience hooked in, exactly as you're saying, as you're
Mitch,
mentioning.
If I could have you to introduce me at every event, I would.
Oh, thank you, bud. No, I appreciate that. Well, what can people do in order to access John Ball? I think your Keynote background, you're dialed in perfectly, or I wouldn't have had you as a guest on the show. Where can they contact you? What is the best way? And of course, this will be available to everybody that listens to this, so they can utilize your services for Keynote services and presentation skills enhancements.
Thank you. I do have a website. It's called presentinfluence.com, and it is the best way to find out more about me and to get in touch with me as well. There's a contact form there. There's a quiz where you can find out your greater speaking strengths and maybe some of your weaknesses as well. And you can find out what services are available. You can find out what kind of things I speak about on there. And so all the information is on that website. It's a great place to come. And even if you just want to reach out and say, hi, I'd like to know a bit more about you, or maybe you want to have a discovery call, that's the place to do it.
John, you've been a great guest. I'm going to definitely have you back in a few months, because there's so much more that we could drill down on in the area of speaking. Many topics, because we're both passionate about the art and science of communication, persuasion, speaking. So we'll have you back again real soon. And thank you for coming today.
Absolute joy, Mitch. Thank you.
Thanks for tuning in to the Amazing Authorities Podcast. If today's episode inspired you, take a moment to subscribe, rate, and leave a review. It helps more experts like you rise to the top. For behind-the-scenes access and free resources to boost your authority, head to mitchcarson.com. Until next time, stay amazing.